All right, it is the Arise Exchange right here on Arise News. Up next, a new report on the global pension market. We're going to go right into that. In fact, right now, we're going right now, which was recently released by the Allianz Global Specialty, shows that two of Africa's largest economies, Nigeria and South Africa, are ranked down at the bottom of the list. In France, protests against the new pension legislation have been ongoing for weeks as workers, unions, and other citizens kicked against President Macron's reform. Joining me to discuss the new global pension report and the industry is Michaela Grimm. She's a senior economist at Allianz in Switzerland. Good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. What are the key points of this global pension industry report, and why are they important at this time?
Well, during the COVID-19 pandemic, demographic aging was in the background. But in fact, the pandemic only meant a temporary setback in the development of life expectancy. So we try to assess the sustainability and the adequacy of the pension systems worldwide. That is, we questioned how well prepared are they to cushion demographic effects, and how adequate are they to finance old age benefits which are adequate in old age.
What is the global pension industry looking like, considering the 3 years of the, I guess the pandemic, which you just mentioned, turbulence on the macroeconomic front for developed economies, I guess the financial markets and geopolitical tensions, you put that all into a mix?
So our indicator shows that there is overall need for reforms around the world, especially with respect to the adequacy of pension systems in emerging markets and with respect to the long-term sustainability in industrialized countries. Since during the COVID-19 pandemic, there were huge programs to support the households, so the financial leeway of the governments has shrinked, while many private households, especially in emerging markets and in the low-income bracket, were forced to use their savings to finance the gap or the income gaps they had occurred during the COVID-19 pandemic to increase unemployment, for example.
So we've got two of Africa's largest economies in Nigeria and South Africa ranked poorly in your survey. What are the metrics behind the ranking?
Well, we assess the sustainability and the adequacy of the pension systems. And in South Africa and Nigeria, like in many emerging markets, it's especially the adequacy that gives reason for concern. And here, I have to point out, it's not the setup of the pension systems itself, but it's the coverage of the pension systems. Like in Nigeria, only 10%, according to the latest International Labour Organization's figures, are effectively covered by the pension system, that they are contributing to the pension system. And if you think about the fact that a 20-year-old who wants to retire at the age of 50 in 30 years, he has to make sure that he has enough savings to fund 20 years in retirement. So in the end, pension reforms must go hand in hand with labor market reforms, especially to fight the informal labor, to bring more people in the formal labor market so that they are covered by the pension system on the one hand, and especially like in countries like in Nigeria, point of concern is the high youth unemployment rate. So the earlier people can start the careers and the earlier they can contribute, the more time they have to build up enough retirement savings.
I guess, how could Nigeria and South Africa and other frontier African economies improve their pension markets beyond? Is it all about what you just said, the labor force and I guess economic growth and getting more people into work? Is that where it starts and ends?
Not yet. Or like in Nigeria, we see also there's an increasing need to improve the access to financial services. Only 50% said in the latest survey of the World Bank that they have an account at a financial institution. So it's important to improve this as well. And it's also important to make further efforts. I know that the Nigerian government is doing a lot in this respect already, but to improve financial literacy, to make sure that people know that they have to save and to provide for old age.
And as far as, I also wanted to throw in one more point there for emerging markets. currency depreciation, is that also a factor in the value of these pensions? Because for a lot of folks in frontier markets whose currencies are benchmarked against the dollar, when you think about the value and when they're losing value, does that not factor into the value of what these pensioners are getting at the end of the day?
No, we take into account the private households' financial assets in national currency. So we don't take into account the FX market movements. We look at the financial assets within a country and take this into account and compare this to GDP. And Nigeria has also here in this respect still backlog demand compared to other countries where financial assets are multiple of GDP in the meantime.
Great stuff. Michaela Grimm, thank you so much for joining us, senior economist at Allianz. Thank you so much for taking us through this very important report. Do have a great evening.